So week 3 of the NFL season was complete chaos, and I absolutely loved it. It featured several games that went down to the wire and were decided by a blocked field goal, one of the greatest defensive performances by a player I've seen in years, more tough injuries, and a pretty glaring concern for one of the best running backs in the NFL. Well, in today's video, I'll break down the most surprising takeaways from week 3 of the NFL season, right after Alright, first up, Indiana Jones and the Colts keep moving full steam ahead after another dominant performance on Sunday, this time against a divisional foe in the Titans. They sacked Cam Ward 4 times and got the best of him on this pick 6, the first interception of his young NFL career, by the way. Kenny Moore was the man who got the pick there, and a little note on him, he did suffer a calf injury in this game that will reportedly keep him out for a couple of weeks. So in the meantime, the team went out and signed the veteran Mike Hilton to fill in his place. But back to this game, because Jonathan Taylor had his second consecutive 100-yard rushing game, and the man formerly known as Danny Dimes was once again efficient and managed the game well with 228 yards and a touchdown. Indy won 41-20 and have now scored 103 points through the first 3 games, which is more than any Peyton Manning-led Colts team ever scored in the first 3 weeks of a season. Now, sadly, they did have to punt after not doing so a single time in weeks 1 or 2. They only punted once, though, and crazily enough, that's the fewest punts by a team through 3 weeks in NFL history. Daniel Jones has 3 passing touchdowns, 3 rushing touchdowns, and 0 turnovers so far this season. Pretty unreal stuff out of Jones and the Colts as a whole. They now move to 3-0, and as you'll see throughout this video, are starting to really pull away from the rest of the AFC South. But for now, I want to talk about one of, if not the greatest individual defensive performance I've seen in my lifetime. That probably sounds like a bit of an exaggeration, but listen to this. In the Vikings game against the Bengals on Sunday, cornerback Isaiah Rodgers had 1 interception returned for a 87-yard pick 6. Then in the second quarter, he punched this ball out, recovered it, and took that to the house for a 66-yard scoop and score. And on the very next possession, literally 2 plays later, this man forced another fumble, this time punching it out on Jamar Chase. This was all done in the first half of the game, an interception, 2 forced fumbles, 2 touchdowns, and he even had an impressive PBU against T. Higgins that prevented a touchdown. Rodgers became the first player in NFL history with a pick 6, a fumble return for a touchdown, and 2 forced fumbles in a game, and he did all of that in the first half. That performance earned him a 99.9 PFF grade, the highest grade they've ever given to a player on either side of the ball. That's really the biggest takeaway from this game, although Carson Wentz looked solid in McCarthy's absence, and Jordan Mason topped 100 yards and had 2 touchdowns in his first start of the year with Aaron Jones on injured reserve. Mason now has the best EPA per rush and the highest rushing success rate of any back in the league, so kudos to their front office for bringing him in this season. The Vikings moved to 2-1 after a soul-snatching 48-10 win over the Jake Browning-led Bengals, and now they head to Ireland in Week 4 for an international game against the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Packers had a chance to remain the lone leaders of the NFC North after Sunday, but they fell flat against the Cleveland Browns in what was one of the most shocking results of the week. This game was gross from the jump. It was a defensive slugfest with the score 3-0 at halftime. The Packers took a 10-0 lead late in the third, though, and I kind of figured that was all she wrote, but here's where it gets crazy. Cleveland hit a field goal to make it a 7-point game. Then Jordan Love threw a terrible pick, which the Browns turned into 7 after Quinshon Judkins' first career touchdown. So all tied at 10 now. The Packers moved the ball to set up Brandon McManus for a go-ahead 43-yard field goal with less than 30 seconds to go. But the kick was blocked. Flacco got the offense into field goal range, and in a wild turn of events, Andre Schmidt drilled a 55-yarder to give the Browns the upset win 13-10, an absolutely insane finish with Cleveland scoring all 13 of their points in the final 3.5 minutes of the fourth quarter. It's the first time in franchise history that the Browns won a game in which they hadn't scored any points and trailed by at least 10 with 4 minutes left to go. Some tough news for them, though, is that starting offensive tackle DeJuan Jones suffered a knee injury during the game that will require season-ending surgery. a very tough blow for this team. And as for the Packers, they're going to need to shake this one off quickly because they play the Cowboys in Dallas on Sunday Night Football next week. And I'm dead serious when I say that might be the most watched regular season game in NFL history. Micah Parsons returning home to Dallas in primetime. Sign me up. I'm thinking so, and honestly, I'm also thinking the Packers win that one by more than one score, but that's a combo for a later video. Anyway, that was far from the only blocked kick on Sunday. In fact, it wasn't even the only one that decided the ending of a game. The Rams were lining up for a 44-yard field goal that would have won the game with time expiring, but the big man in the middle, Jordan Davis, not only blocked it, but scooped it up and took it 61 yards to the crib, giving Philly the win 33-26. Davis was moving on that return. He was clocked at 18.59 miles per hour, the fastest speed by a ball carrier weighing over 300 pounds since at least 2017. And get this, on the Rams' possession prior to this one, Philly blocked another field goal that would have given LA the lead, and they wouldn't have even needed to attempt their final one. This game got crazy in the second half. I thought LA actually had this one in the bag after they went up 26-7 in the third quarter. They were also stifling Saquon, limiting him to just 46 yards, which was the lowest amount of yards and lowest yards per carry for him since joining the Eagles. In fact, Philly had just 33 yards in the first half, but they flipped a switch literally in the second with 255 yards and 26 unanswered points to secure the W 33-26. Jalen Hurts had his best passing game of the year, 226 yards through the air and 3 touchdowns as A.J. Brown topped 100 yards for the first time since Week 16 of last year. Philly is now 19-1 in their last 20 games, including the playoffs, which is the best 20-game stretch in franchise history. Well, let's get to this next game. This one was out in Tampa between the Bucs and Jets, with Tyrod Taylor getting the start while Justin Fields remains in concussion protocol. I'll fast forward to the ending here because it's pretty crazy. Chase McLaughlin was lining up for a 43-yard field goal that would have given Tampa a 9-point lead with 2 minutes left in the game, but Will McDonald jumped over the line and blocked the kick just like Jordan Davis. He recovered it as well and raced in for the touchdown that put New York up by 1. But just like we've seen in weeks 1 and 2, Baker has literal ice in his veins, and a couple of big completions set them up for a chip shot, and this time it was good. Bucs win it 29-27 in a nail-biter. And get this, Tampa became the first team in NFL history with a game-winning score in the final minute of the fourth quarter in each of their first 3 games. They made even more history by extending their streak of rushing for over 100 yards while holding their opponent to under 100 rushing yards in 11 games. That is the longest streak in league history. They're not the prettiest games, but they're getting the job done without 3 starters along that O-line. No Chris Godwin, and no Mike Evans, who suffered a mild, I believe, hamstring strain in this game. So he's going to miss a couple of games here, my best guess. And what's crazy is Evans has dealt with a hamstring issue or injury in some capacity every year since 2019. With all that being said, they're still off to a 3-0 start for the first time since 2005 and are in prime position to win the NFC South for the 5th consecutive year. The Chiefs know a thing or two about being dominant in their division, but after a slow start, their 9-year run of winning the AFC West could be in jeopardy because the Chargers advanced to not only 3-0 yesterday, but 3-0 in the division as well. They beat the Chiefs, the Raiders, and then most recently, the Denver Broncos. I'll touch more on the Chiefs in a bit here, but LA was down 20-13 in the fourth quarter, Broncos up 7. Well, Herbert then somehow got this throw off to Keenan Allen for a very impressive touchdown. The defense then forced a 3-and-out, and Dicker the kicker drilled this game-winning 43-yard field goal with time expiring. I'm half surprised it didn't get blocked based on the outcome of some of these other games. This was a weird game, though, because the Chargers dominated the stat sheet. They had 20 more first downs than Denver did, with the Broncos going just 2 of 13 on third downs, but losing the turnover battle 2-0 allowed the Broncos to hang around. They ultimately fell short in the end, yes, and their downfall is how much Denver has struggled on early downs. They are 32nd out of 32 teams in success rate on these early downs, despite having a top 10 O-line. Way less than ideal. Anyway, it was Denver's pass rush putting in the work in this one, flustering Herbert, who was pressured on 54.7% of his dropbacks, the highest pressure rate he's faced in his career. They got home for 5 sacks, but give Herbert credit for standing in there and coming through when they needed him in the fourth. Omarion Hampton had 129 yards from scrimmage. the most of his young career, and they're going to need him to step up even more because sadly, Najee Harris tore his Achilles in this game, a brutal non-contact injury, and is out for the rest of the year. A brutal injury to say the least for Harris, who just signed with LA in the offseason and had never missed a single game in his career. Cam Akers has proven it's not impossible for a running back to return from an Achilles tear. He's actually done this twice. So hopefully we see Najee make a comeback at some point because at the end of the day, he's still just 27 years old and should have years left in his career. And sadly, Najee Harris was not the only running back that had a season-ending injury on Sunday. Cardinals running back James Conner got tackled awkwardly and was carted off the field with a lower leg injury, and the broadcast would not show the replay again for good reason because it did not look good. Yesterday, Monday, Adam Schefter reported that he'll be out for the remainder of the season with a severe right ankle injury that needs surgery. Conner has been a pillar on that offense since joining the team in 2021, so a big bummer there, and he was hoping to rush for his third consecutive 1,000-yard season, a very tough loss for Arizona, and at 30 years old, I would say his return is a little less likely than Najee's, but again, I'm going to root for any of these guys that get injured and hope that they make a full recovery. The 49ers also lost a franchise pillar on Sunday because Nick Bosa left the game with a knee injury, didn't return. Then yesterday, we found out that he tore his ACL and will be out for the year. It's honestly unbelievable how injuries have plagued this team for the past 2 seasons, and now they're going to be without one of the best defenders in all of football for the remainder of the year, and it's only week 3. Well, moving on to week 4. On top of that, Mac Jones, who was filling in for the injured Brock Purdy, re-aggravated the PCL strain he suffered during training camp and was kind of hobbling around out there to finish the game. They did go on to win this one, by the way, thanks to a walk-off field goal at the end. Mac Jones played another fine game, and he came up clutch, leading them on that game-winning drive. Before that moment, he was just 3-17 in comeback chances in his career, so that had to feel good for him. Ricky Pearsall posted his second 100-yard receiving game of the young season, and CMC had 10 catches himself. The 12th time he's recorded double-digit catches in his career, which is an NFL record by a running back. The win is nice, being 3-0 is nice, but I'm sure all 49ers fans can think about is the gut punch of losing their top pass rusher for the season. The NFC West is no joke yet again, and health may play a big part in which team ultimately ends up winning the division. The Niners are currently sitting at the top, but Arizona, Seattle, and LA, they're all right behind them at 2-1. Seattle looked dominant against the Saints, so maybe not as impressive, but still, they mopped the floor with them, winning 44-13. Their rookie receiver, Torrey Horton, made a statement with a franchise record 95-yard punt return. Then he caught a touchdown in the second quarter as well. Sam Darnold didn't need to do all that much, but he managed the game well, going 14 of 18 for over 200 yards and 2 scores. The defense remains very stout, as they're the only team in the entire league that has held opponents to 17 points or less in all 3 games. The Saints, meanwhile, fell to 0-3, and Spencer Rattler is now 0-9 as a starter, the only quarterback with an 0-5 or worse record since 2024. It may be Tyler Shuck time, though I don't really know how much that will help, as this team needs all kinds of help. The silver lining is that they're probably looking at a top 5 draft pick, so that's something, I guess. Then we saw another blowout on Sunday. This one, pretty surprising to say the least. The Panthers pitched a shutout against Michael Penix and the Falcons, embarrassing them 30-0 in Carolina. The Falcons actually pulled Penix and put in the most expensive backup quarterback in the league, Kirk Cousins, for the entirety of the fourth quarter. Hard to blame them after Penix completed just 50% of his passes and threw 2 interceptions, with one turning into a pick 6. It was by far the worst showing of his young career, but give Carolina's defense credit for making his life hell on Sunday. Bryce Young didn't light it up, but he remains effective on quick passes. He has 270 yards on passes under 10 air yards, which is 6th most in the league. Then his 4 touchdowns on quick passes are actually tied for first. We'll see if they can carry this momentum into next week against the Patriots, because honestly, if you look at their schedule, they have a lot of winnable games coming up in the future. They play the Patriots next week, who just did everything they possibly could to lose to the Steelers on Sunday. Well, mission accomplished, because their 5 turnovers absolutely killed their chances despite looking like the better team for most of the game. They had 166 more yards on offense and won the possession battle. But Drake May threw a pick and lost a fumble, as did Antonio Gibson. Then Ramondre Stevenson coughed it up twice, including a fumble at the goal line that would have been a touchdown had he not lost it. I think we're going to be in for an uptick of snaps for the rookie Treyveon Henderson after this abysmal showing from Stevenson. I say that because he's coming off a season in 2024 in which he led all running backs in fumbles across the league with 6. So yeah, can't have that, and you can't have 14 missed tackles on defense, which is what they had according to NFL Pro. 14 missed tackles and 5 turnovers. I'm honestly shocked they didn't lose by a truck ton. The Steelers' offense wasn't exactly lighting it up either, but Aaron Rodgers did throw a couple of tutties and officially moved past his former teammate Brett Favre for the 4th most passing touchdowns in NFL history with 510. The Patriots weren't alone in their efforts to look like dog feces on offense, though. The Texans joined them in solidarity by committing 3 turnovers and only managing 10 points against a Jags team that gave up 31 to the Bengals a week ago. But hey, give them props, because through the first 3 weeks, the Jags defense has 9 takeaways, the most in the NFL. That's as many as they had for the entire 2024 NFL season, ranking dead last. So quite the turnaround for the Jags in that area, and it showed up big on Sunday. Houston officially has a problem, pun intended, as they're now 0-3 with one of the worst offenses in the league. They're dead last in points per game and 29th in yards, with CJ Stroud currently ranking 26th in QBR. Not having Joe Mixon hurts for sure, but they did little to nothing to address the offensive line in the offseason aside from taking a tackle in the second round. Their defense is still elite, they're 5th in points allowed and also 5th in sacks, but it doesn't matter if the offense can't score points, which doesn't really, at least so far, look like they can. Funnily enough, the last team to start 0-3 and make the playoffs was the Texans in 2018. So maybe they do it again. I don't know. At this point in time, I'm not going to put money on that. An offense that did look good this week was surprisingly the Bears. Okay, maybe not that shocking considering they played the Cowboys, who are giving up over 30 points a game this year, but still, Caleb Williams had a career day with nearly 300 yards and 4 touchdowns as the Bears blew out the Cowboys 31-14. It was a rough day for Matt Eberflus, the defensive coordinator for the Cowboys, who coached the Bears from 2022 to 2024 and was making his first trip back to Soldier Field since being fired. He might already be on the hot seat in Dallas, but I know it's still early, so we'll see there. Either way, Caleb Williams looked awesome and was pushing the ball down the field with a lot of success, averaging 10.6 pass yards per attempt, which is a new career high for him. Then they even ran a flea flicker that Caleb connected with the rookie Luther Burden III on for a 65-yard touchdown. Bears linebacker Tremaine Edmonds had a big day too, recording 2 of the team's 3 interceptions. It was a good first win for them, but an ugly loss for the Cowboys, who have even bigger issues to worry about now. And I'm not talking about George Pickens having another one of his not-so-surprising meltdowns on the sideline either. No, CeeDee Lamb left the game with an ankle injury and didn't return. We learned yesterday that it's a high ankle sprain, and the team, at least per first initial reports, were going to reevaluate him in 10 to 14 days. So that means he could miss the next couple of weeks, but Jerry Jones said later on Monday afternoon that he wouldn't rule out having to play CeeDee Lamb on injured reserve. Their rookie guard Tyler Booker is most likely going to IR as well with an ankle sprain of his own, and he's going to miss around 4 to 6 weeks because of it. Another tough loss for Dallas, and overall a tough start to the season for America's favorite team to hate. And again, they welcome in Micah Parsons and the Packers next week, so good luck with all that. Next up, shout out to Marcus Mariota for coming in and leading the Commanders to a 41-24 win over the Raiders with Jaden Daniels out. Mariota had just 6 incompletions and threw for over 200 yards with a touchdown, plus he had another 40 yards and another score on the ground. Their rookie receiver Jalen Lane got loose for a 90-yard punt return touchdown, which was absolutely electric. Then Jeremy McNichols went beast mode on this 60-yard touchdown, which was also impressive. Washington pounded the rock and racked up over 200 yards and 3 touchdowns on the ground, with the Raiders playing from behind for essentially the entire game. Trey Tucker randomly went nuclear for the Raiders. The guy hadn't posted a single 100-yard game in his first 2 seasons, but on Sunday, he had 145 and 3 touchdowns. It helps that Geno Smith averaged 3.82 seconds from snap to throw time, the longest time to throw of any quarterback in a game since 2022. Even with that, it wasn't enough to keep them in it as the Raiders fell to 1-2, while the Commanders moved to 2-1 and hope to get Jaden Daniels back next week from his knee sprain. Then for the primetime games, the Chiefs took care of business against the Giants in New York on Sunday Night Football, with the defense really stealing the show. They forced Russ into 2 interceptions. He had a couple of miserable showings in the red zone, throwing the ball away even with the game on the line, and KC ended up winning the turnover battle 2-0, while Mahomes and the offense did enough to stay in front. It was a pretty ugly game, if I'm going to be honest, especially in the first half, but Tyquan Thornton showed up big in this one for KC, leading the room in receiving yards and helped contribute to 2 of their touchdowns, really 2 of their only touchdowns because the rest were field goals. The second one was a 1-yard run by Kareem Hunt, but it was helped by a big-time Thornton catch to bring them within, I think, the 2 or the 1-yard line. And then Monday Night Football was an absolute banger, just like we all thought it would be. It was back and forth for the first 3 quarters, but once the Lions took the lead in the fourth, they never looked back. Dan Campbell is a psychopath, so of course they went for it on 4th down 3 different times, converting every single one of them, including a crucial 4th and 2 near the end of the game where Goff floated a perfect pass to Amon-Ra St. Brown, which set up a David Montgomery 31-yard touchdown run that put the game out of reach. The Ravens did manage a garbage time touchdown, but it was too far too late, and the Lions pulled off the big-time road win 38-30. I will say the Ravens were stopped at one point in the red zone near the goal line. That being a touchdown would have possibly made that game much different, but didn't matter. Detroit was running all over the Ravens all night, outgaining Baltimore 224-85 on the ground. The Lions had a 98-yard scoring drive and a 96-yard scoring drive, becoming the first team since the Patriots in 2021 to have 2 drives of over 95 yards, resulting in a touchdown in the same game. The Lions didn't turn the ball over or allow any sacks, which was huge. They ran the ball on 54.5% of their plays, which is the 9th highest rate in the 86 games they've played under Dan Campbell. Penei Sewell was lights out, allowing just 1 pressure on 30 pass blocks, making this the 18th game of his career he's allowed 1 or fewer pressures. Now, part of the reason why the Lions were able to run all over the Ravens is they were down a couple key defensive linemen, but still, hats off to the Lions for that one. And even though they allowed 30 points, the defense came up huge in the fourth quarter, especially that defensive line for Detroit had Lamar running for his life, registering 7 sacks, which is tied for the most in his NFL career. Aiden Hutchinson also had a pivotal forced fumble on Derrick Henry, punching out the ball in Ravens territory, which set them up for an easy field goal. That's the 3rd time in 3 games, by the way, that King Henry has fumbled. And going back to that Bills game, it's the 2nd time that it's happened on their side of the field in the 4th quarter in a crucial moment of the game. It's crazy because I believe Henry only fumbled 3 times over the last 2 seasons heading into 2025, but 3 fumbles in 3 games, all lost, is definitely concerning. Everyone's kind of wondering this morning just how legit the Ravens are. They've played 2 good teams this year, and their defense has given up a combined 79 points to those teams. Their only win came against the Browns, so I think we're going to find out a little bit more about this team when they play the Chiefs next Sunday, a team that hasn't looked the best out there either, if I'm going to be honest. As for Detroit, this was a big statement win for them, coming off the heels of them blowing out the Bears at home. Up next, they've got the Browns and Bengals, so that should be a couple of W's before they play the Chiefs in Kansas City week 6. Anyway, those were some of the biggest takeaways from week 3 of the NFL season. Let me know your biggest takeaways in the comments down below. Any surprises, concerns you have heading into week 4, let me know either way in the comments down below. And with that, I'll see y'all next time.